Good morning and welcome to our Veterans Day program for 2021. My name is Braden Mitchell and I currently serve as the Mayor Pro Tem and Senior City Council member. This program has been pre-recorded in segments and edited together. The city staff and officials have worked hard to put together a program that appropriately honors and shows gratitude to our veterans. We would also like to recognize the members of our Veterans Advisory Group. They are Lois Davis, David Leahy, and Charles Kirkfleet. These folks deserve our gratitude and recognition. They have done and continue to do a lot for our Riverdale veterans. Most of all, we would like to welcome those veterans and veterans' families that are here participating with us this day. We are grateful for the beautiful Riverdale City Veterans Memorial Plaza that provides the backdrop for our ceremony today. May we now have a moment of silence as we pause to remember those who have served and those who are now serving in the defense of this great nation. May we especially remember those wounded, those missing in action, and those who have made the ultimate sacrifice to protect our many freedoms. Thank you. We will now proceed with our flag ceremony and national anthem. If the audience would please arise. Thank you. You may be seated. The color guard was provided by the Utah Military Academy. The national anthem was performed by a choir from T.H. Bell Junior High. Mr. Jim Simone is our bugler. We thank them for their service this morning. We will next hear from our guest speaker. Major Kit Workman is the founder, Deputy Superintendent, and Senior Commandant of the Utah Military Academy located here in Riverdale. Major Workman.
Thank you. And on behalf of the Utah Military Academy and myself, we thank you for the opportunity to be here today. We are sorry that Mayor Searle couldn't be here. We hope he's feeling better, and our thoughts and prayers are with him. It was Christmas time, 1776, and the cause of liberty seemed lost. After a string of defeats, Washington's troops were in retreat. Fleeing for their lives, they marched across New Jersey, barely keeping ahead of the British. The revolution was going nowhere, and many patriots feared it never would, as loyalists were lining up to swear allegiance to King George III. On December 2nd, Washington's ragtag army, shrinking daily from disease and desertions, reached Trenton on the banks of the Delaware River. Gathering every boat they could find so the British couldn't follow, Washington's men crossed the river into Pennsylvania. They were encamped, safe, but only for a moment. When the river froze, Washington feared that the British would advance across the ice, flatten his army, and roll to victory in Philadelphia. Washington could only count 6,000 men, who were described as almost naked, dying of cold, without blankets, and very ill supplied. Even worse, enlistments were about to expire. As of 1 January, Washington would be left with fewer than 2,000 men. Meanwhile, some 1,100 Hessians, German soldiers who were among the finest fighters in the world, had just taken up quarters in Trenton. All seemed hopeless. Morale was crumbling. But a fierce supporter of the Revolution who had traveled with Washington's army refused to despair. Thomas Paine, a recent immigrant and author of the best-selling pamphlet Common Sense that had helped to inspire the Revolution, had just written a new essay, the first of a series called The American Crisis. It was published on December 19th, and General Washington directed that it be read to every man. And these words helped to inspire them. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country. But he that stands now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have the consolation with us that the harder the conflict, the more the glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheaply, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how we put a proper price upon its goods. And it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. I thank God that I fear not. I see no real cause for fear. In the end, we will be the victor. For though the flame of liberty may sometimes cease to shine, the ember will never expire. Washington knew this was his last chance to act. So he formed an audacious plan. He would cross the Delaware north of Trenton with 2,400 men, 40% of his army, and sneak up on the Hessian garrison. He hoped to surprise them well before dawn. The crossing began at 6 p.m. on December 25th. With Massachusetts fishermen manning the boats, the Patriots made their way across the ice-choked river, pushing through punishing gale. For 9 hours they rowed, ferrying boatload after boatload of men and cannon, until finally at 3 a.m. the last soldier stepped foot on the New Jersey shore. Then came the harrowing trek to Trenton. 9-mile ordeal through freezing wind, sleet, and snow. John Fitzgerald, a member of Washington's staff, wrote in his journal, "It will be a terrible night for soldiers who have no shoes. Some of them have tied old rags on their feet. Others are barefoot. But I have not heard one man complain." As the Patriot Army trudged southwards, bloody footprints stained the snow. If ever fortune needed to favor the brave, it was on this dismal Christmas night. The Hessian commander, Colonel Rahl, spent the evening drinking and playing cards in the home of a loyalist. When a local farmer knocked on the door around midnight to warn him of the colonials' coming, a servant refused to interrupt the party. So the farmer scribbled a note to the Hessian commander, who stuffed it in his pocket unread. Meanwhile, after marching through the early morning hours, George Washington and his men reached Trenton and fell upon the Hessians just after dawn, totally surprising them. It was all over in about 2 hours. Washington's soldiers captured about 1,000 men, and Colonel Rahl was fatally wounded. In his pocket was still that warning, unread. Americans suffered few casualties. George Washington reported no more than 2 soldiers killed and several wounded. Our nation's history is filled with this kind of heroism. Average men and women who have answered the call. Stories like Colonel Joshua Chamberlain, a Massachusetts teacher who shined at Fredericksburg, Gettysburg, and again at Petersburg. Sergeant Alvin York, a religious pacifist in France. Audie Murphy, the orphan son of a Texas sharecropper in Europe. George Wallen, a Utah farm boy at Iwo Jima. And Major Brent Taylor, an Eagle Scout, beloved Utah politician and family man who gave the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan. Americans have always answered their nation's call, not for fame or riches, but for hope, for ideas, for their friends, their families, their brothers, their sisters. Today we take this moment to thank all who have stood up to the call, because as President Dwight D. Eisenhower said, we must be ready to do all for our country, for history does not entrust the care of freedom to the weak or the timid. But truth be told, less than 1% of this nation's citizens have had to answer the call. Those that have represent a wide, diverse set of this nation. For God has continually raised a generation of those who are willing to write their country a blank check, sometimes with their lives. Today we thank those who answer the call. For as George Orwell said, we sleep safe in our beds because rough men stand ready at night to visit violence on those who do us harm. Today we thank you that have served, as said best by the words of Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but we can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who have fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us here, be here dedicated to the great task that remains before us, that from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. Again, we thank you who have served. And I'd like to end my remarks today with the words of a British writer, John Stuart Mill. War is an ugly thing, but it's not the ugliest thing. The decay and degraded state of moral and patriotic feelings, which thinks that nothing is worth war, is much worse. The person that has nothing for which he is willing to fight, nothing which is more important than his own personal safety, is a miserable creature and has no chance of being free unless made and kept so by the exertions of better men than himself. Thank you to those who have answered the call, however it came, for being a better man or woman who kept this nation free and as a free model for the world. May God continue to bless you for your service, and may God continue to bless this great nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Major Workman, for your remarks today. Next, we have put together a special tribute to our current mayor, Norm Searle. Not only has Mayor Searle diligently served the community during the past 8 years, but before that he served in the Air Force for most of his life. Please join us in celebrating and recognizing his service as a veteran. Thank you, and thank you, Mayor Searle. To help us celebrate this year's Veterans Day, we are pleased to have the Riverdale City Band with us. They are conducted by Jeanette Porter and will provide a musical tribute to our veterans by performing Armed Forces Medley. This is a medley of songs from each branch of the service. Wherever you may be, when you hear the song from you or a member of your family's branch of service, please stand proud. Here is Armed Forces Medley. Riverdale is lucky to have this beautiful Veterans Memorial Plaza to honor our veterans. Names of veterans, both past and present, are added to the memorial where they may be honored and recognized by friends and families throughout our community and the surrounding areas. In closing, I would just like to express my appreciation to our veterans. I found a quote by Winston Churchill that appropriately sums up my feelings. Speaking about the brave feats accomplished by the Royal Air Force, he said, quote, "Never was so much owed by so many to so few," close quote. I'm so grateful for the brave veterans that have fought and sacrificed so that we may all enjoy the wonderful freedoms of this nation. You are truly heroes. I hope that you will feel the love and support that we have for you. Hopefully each one of us might live our lives in a way that we are worthy of the sacrifices made by our veterans. We are grateful for your service. This concludes our program today. Thank you for being here.